Everything's good though?
Yeah.
And then find that link, send it to me.
I already did.
Oh, on WhatsApp, thanks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So thank you all for persevering through the elements and a lack of heating apparently to come to the final session for this module of the grounding on finding purpose. This week is going to be about purpose in action. We are joined by Brother Uthman al-Talib to my right over here, who is dressed very appropriately for the occasion. Nice hat, by the way. So without further ado, we will get started. Thank you all very much for joining us. Brother Uthman al-Talib.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى ودعا إلى سنته إلى يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for coming.
And also, if you're getting a coffee or you're on the right side of the cafe, please do be as quiet as possible because we want to be able to give the speaker his chance for everyone to hear what he's trying to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sound has never been an issue. So again, let's start with Surah Al-Fatiha to get us in the right state of mind, the right state of heart. Inshallah, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open up for us what hopefully is beneficial and helps us and guides us to get us to where we want to be, inshallah. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawm al-Din. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. So, who was here the first week that we started this? Okay. Okay. Who was here last week? Okay. So still like half, if not a little bit less. What did we talk about the first week?
A lot of it had to do with identity, how to balance your Islamic identity with a workplace identity, and can those two worlds mutually exist or not?
And well, I mean, we can go through it. I'm just trying to get you guys involved and also to help everybody finish up what they're doing. So the first week was really identifying, well, what's the power of having a purpose, right? And I think a lot of the questions that were asked were, who felt like they are living with purpose? Who actually feels like every day they wake up and they're living the purpose that they were created for? And really that was based on, very pixelated. I don't know if that's going to be this. Can you guys see what I'm seeing? Looks a little off. So I don't know if that technology there. But what is this? What this is happening? Something's not working. Let's see if the next one. Okay, so this is a kitab. So what did we say about, what was the importance of the kitab, or a book? Why is a book important? What does that represent? Knowledge? Well, in the context of what we're talking about, was there a specific example that I gave that described what the importance of this book or a specific book is?
Legacy?
Legacy? Okay. Your kitab book, right? So what does that even mean? There you go. Okay. So everything we're living through today, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that we're going to see every single action, every single thought, every like crossing thought that everything our heart felt in a book. And based on what's written in that book, it's either going to land in our right hands or it's going to land in our left hands. And there's going to be certain people that when it lands in their right hands, those are the people that are going to run around and say, "Ha umqra'u kitabiya, inni dhanantu anni mulaqin hisabiya, fahuwa fi 'ishatin radiya, fi jannatin 'aliya, qutufuha daniya." These are the people that when they get the book in their right hand, they're going to run around to everybody and say, "Go ahead, read my book. Read my book. I'm so happy with it. I'm so pleased with it. Inni dhanantu anni mulaqin hisabiya." Because I lived my life in a way that I knew I was going to meet my accountability. I was going to be held accountable. So because of that, I lived a different lifestyle. Whereas the person that gets it in their left hand, they're going to be, "Ya laytani lam uta kitabiya, wa lam adri ma hisabiya." Oh, I wish I never even got my book, and I wish I didn't know anything about my accountability. So these are the two different groups that are going to now continue to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's just the first step, is which hand do you get it in? The thing that gets harder as the day of judgment moves on is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we're going to take that book that either landed in our right or in our left, and let's all say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who the book lands in their right hands. Ameen. We're going to take that book and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to tell us, "Iqra' kitaba." Now read your book. Right? Because right here you just got a sign. If you got it in the right, inshallah all of us are ashab al-yamin, so let's just talk about that. We got it in our right hands, and we didn't read it. We're just like, hey, we made it. That's it. We're good to go. But there's still another step after that. There's the step where Allah tells us, now read your book, because this is what's going to be the accountability. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us among those that don't even need to read their book, because we enter paradise bighayri hisab, without any accountability, without being asked. Without being asked. So that's why the kitab is so important. Why? Because if you live your life knowing that you're going to have this meeting with Allah, it changes how deliberate you are in the way you're living your life today. That's the importance of it. It's something that we overlook because it's so easy to get busy with daily life. It's so easy to become distracted. It's so easy to just forget about what's happening, because what's happening to you in the present or what happened to you in the past is more important than that day that Allah is telling you, you're going to meet me and I'm going to tell you to read your book. And so we completely forget about it. We lose sight of it. And so that's why the whole point of this series is to just get us to step back and really say, what do we want our book to say? Because it's the culmination of every single thing that we did. Every moment of our life will be based on whether that moment was connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and got us closer to Him and manifesting what He has created us for, or it's going to push us further away. And so the one key action that I spoke to you about in the first session was salah. We would never be able to understand the magnitude of that day or even understand that we have a purpose far beyond ourselves if we are disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't understand what our purpose would be. Because this is the opportunity that's a one-on-one with the one who created us. He's the one that told us, this is what I expect of you. This is the stuff that's going to earn my pleasure, and this is the stuff that's going to earn my displeasure. So do the things here, and I'm forgiving, and I'm merciful, and I increase. But if we don't ever do the one-on-ones, right? And we gave like a very simple example. Think about your daily life. If you don't have a one-on-one with this important leader in your life, and they never tell you what they expect of you, right? Even if you take it on simpler terms, your spouse, your partner, your manager, your boss, your CEO, if you don't ever sit down with them and they tell you what they expect of you, and you just do things, do you ever think you're going to land on the thing that they wanted you to do if you never spoke to them? No, it doesn't work that way. We got to think about salah in those same terms, that these are one-on-ones with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we can connect and speak to Him about what He expects and also what we're feeling, right? What's the feedback loop that we want to create with Allah? And I want to tell you something a bit sad that I've been, the more people that you talk to, the more depth that you go to, you really start to learn and understand things that you've taken for granted, right? And so I want to share this with you because this may have happened to you as well. I've now had a series of conversations with people where their understanding of salah is very rules-based, okay? So when I tell them what I just described to you, like, do you talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during salah? Like, I'm just concentrated on trying not to make a mistake. I'm just trying to make sure that I can get through the salah and not mess anything up from a legal standpoint. So he's like, I don't understand what you mean by talk to Allah. Like, I'm too focused on not messing up. And that made me feel sad because once we and this is the entire existence of Imam Ghazali, was trying to transform the mind and the heart of the Muslim Ummah to understand that Allah is far beyond any rule. Allah is far beyond any commandment. Allah and our relationship with Him is far beyond any do this, don't do this standpoint. But unfortunately, the way that many of us have been taught, Islam is very rules-based. And so we start to lose sight of the actual objective of what this action that Allah told us you need to do it 5 times a day, spread out over the day, where it sometimes wakes you up at night, and it sometimes keeps you up at night. And then you have to break your work cycles just to go do it. There's a reason behind it. It's not just so you follow the rules. It's so that you connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You regenerate yourself in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 5 times a day. But if we're so worried and preoccupied with not making a mistake, which is something we also spoke about in the last week, because we're so focused on not making mistakes in our life because we've never been taught that mistakes are okay and they're the path towards learning, not the path towards, the hammer dropping on you, then we lose the beauty and the taste of what salah can be for us. And it's a transformative experience if you've ever tasted what it feels like to be in nothingness. Just be in awe. Be enveloped in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any regard to what's happening around you. And many of us have had those salawat, right? A sister asked me, I think in the first one, she's like, well, how do we have khushu'? And I've really been thinking about this deeply because it's the number one question. And I gave her the answer. I was like, well, first you just got to start, right? You just start praying. And then you start to build your love over time. But as I reflect on that, I think we just have a misconception of salah to begin with, where if our mind wanders, we think we've lost our salah. Right? Khushu', meaning we've lost our concentration. If my mind goes to something else, that's it. The whole prayer is gone. There's no point for it. You know, I might as well just get through the actions and check it off the list of things that I have to do. But actually, and you'll find this even in meditation literature, that the whole point of actually finding khushu' is that your mind wanders and you're able to recenter it back on what you're focusing on. And the power of the brain being able to wander and come back is actually the power of the transformational power of neurotransmitters and new neural pathways. But if we just wander and we never come back, we actually lose the essence of what the salah does, where then it becomes a communication between you and Allah. Right? So think about it. If I'm in salah, and this, just remember, stories of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He used to organize entire armies in his salah. He used to organize how he's going to set up the armies for battle in his salah because it was divinely guided. Now we can say, oh yeah, but he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's one of the 10 that's guaranteed. I mean, he's a wali. I don't have that. Like, who am I? But if you don't actually shut the noise of telling yourself that you're not worthy of whatever this, communication process is with Allah, and you just sit in one of your salawats, and you let your mind wander, and then you bring it back and say, Ya Allah, why did I just think about that? What does that thing that I just thought about have to do with you? And how do I align it to you? Like, actually have these thoughts in your salah. And find how you reconnect now what just crossed your mind, and how you're able to now recenter it onto Allah. What was the purpose of that? How does that bring me closer to you? And so what this person that I was speaking to, what I was telling him was, just for a few salawat, forget the rules. This is not a fatwa, this is not anything. I'm saying we all know what the basic rules are, and actually we do more than the basic. So just even reading a second surah in salah is an addition, right? The minimum is you read Surah Al-Fatiha. That's the rukn of salah. We know the movements. So what I said is just transform your salah, just take a couple of them, where you actually just speak to Allah in whatever language you're comfortable with, in your sujood, right? Do your normal salah, Allahu Akbar, Fatiha, read a surah that connects to your heart, understand what you're saying in that surah, and then go into your sujood and just talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now tell me, after that salah, was that different than worrying if you're saying the right thing or the wrong thing? Did you hear anything back from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did anything cross your mind that was a new realization that you didn't have before? And you start to reconnect. So anyways, every time I talk about salah, it takes me down a different path. So we spoke about that, right? That was the review in the first one. Why was it important? Because the ones who turn away from salah, the ones who turn away from the remembrance of Allah, you will never be able to understand what your purpose is, because you're disconnected from the one who tells you what that purpose is. And so Allah here ends this ayah by saying, وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And on that day, the person that turned away from salah, they turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Quran, the remembrance, the teaching, they're going to be resurrected on that day blind. And that person is going to say to Allah, why did you resurrect me blind and I could see? Right? I had sight in the world. So this is explained in another ayah in Surah Al-Hajj, where Allah tells us, فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. It's not the eyes that go blind, but rather it's the hearts and the chest that go blind. So what does that mean? That heavy weight that we spoke about in the first week, when we feel like we're waking up every day and we don't even know if the things we do even matter, right? We haven't figured out our purpose. We're just moving day by day, like going through a conveyor belt of just getting tasks done. That weight, that emptiness, that heaviness, that constriction, is the blindness of the heart not understanding where it needs to go. And the only path for the heart to actually feel satiated is when it's connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only way for your heart to feel like it's actually quenched the thirst that it's been searching for is when it goes back to Allah. And everything else that we try to do to satiate that, the more activities we do, the more accomplishments we chase, the more projects we get to, the more volunteer work we do at Qahwa, the more volunteer work we do at Adams, the more whatever we do in our life that we try to add, because we're still feeling that disconnect, that heaviness, that misguidedness, the aimlessness, none of those things are going to solve it until you actually personally turn back to Allah. And then you start to ask the question, Ya Allah, why did you create me? What was I meant to do? And that's the path now that takes us down the self-reflection. So we went into what our brains do, right? Our brains are created to identify threats and save us from those threats, right? We said from the beginning of time, from the creation of Adam alayhi salam, the thing that Iblis, the thing that Shaitan, the devil teased and tempted our mother and father with is هَلْ أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى شَجَرَةِ الْخُلْدِ وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. Two things. Should I take you to a tree where if you eat from it, you'll be immortal. You'll live forever. You'll never die. You'll never feel the pain of death. And a kingdom, a power that will never go away, right? So imagine the two things that we search every single day of our life that drives us is keeping ourselves alive and trying to make money. We're just trying to build wealth. Everybody's looking at what's the next million that I can make. Some people are even beyond that, right? What's the next billion? Okay, good. Those are the two things that Shaitan tempted our mother and father with, and he got them to eat from the tree. So what does that teach us then? Allah tells us that, well, from that mistake, all of us were created. بَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالٍ كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. All of us were brought to life on this earth to learn from the mistake that our mother and father did, and so that we continue to now be on this journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we get back to Jannah? How do we get back to Allah? And the Shaitan, and this is something I said to somebody today that it's I don't know, maybe it's the first time that I consciously said it. But last week we spoke about worth, right? Our own self-worth. Well, think about this perennial animosity between us and the devil, right? How did it start? It started with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, I'm going to create a representative of me on earth. And it was different than the creation that existed. It was different than the jinn. It was different than the angels, right? They haven't seen a human being represent Allah, but they've seen the other creation do so. So the first thing that Shaitan did, who was a jinn, right? He's made out of fire. He's cool. He feels like, hey, I got this on lock. I'm better than the angels. The first thing he did is like, this creation is not worthy to be your representative. Like, this thing made out of clay, you're choosing that over me? I'm like made out of fire? Like, look how amazing I am. I'm more worthy than this creation to be your representative on earth. So our entire battle, and just think about I'm going to get to, what does the brain do? Gives us thousands of thoughts a day, okay? 80% of those thoughts are negative. What do you think most of those negative thoughts are telling you? You are not worthy. You are not worthy. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not rich enough. You're not. You don't come from that family. Every single day, we toil over these thoughts that are created and generated in our brain that tell us we're not worthy of Allah. But that's the perennial battle that we have with the devil trying to tell us, I'm more worthy than you. So when we give in, when we become susceptible to actually believing the negative thoughts that we have that tell us we're not good enough and we'll never be good enough and nothing we do will ever be enough, then we're playing right into his hands. Because what does that then do? يَصُدَّكُمْ عَنِ الصَّلَاةِ. He's going to get you to turn away from the one thing that keeps giving you more power, more worthiness, more strength, more purpose, more mission, more driven, which is connecting directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to understand the game that's being played. And through that, we start to understand and ask through our deeper questions, well then what was I meant to do? Why am I even here? So that's what I want to take you through today, okay? And this is important because even if you remember, the reason they get 80%, it's not fully scientific, but think about one negative action, right? Like, we hear this all the time in marriage counseling, whatever. One negative thing, you got to do 5 positive to just wipe that out. That means 20% of what's left to overcome needs to be done by something positive, right? Meaning 80% of our brains are pre-programmed to start to think negatively because it protects us. But in reality, it also holds us back. It limits us. So now we got cognitive distortions that start to get created where we start telling our things that we believe. We start believing things about ourselves, around the world. There's truths that we start to just create that start to distort us. These start to be the normal things that go through our minds every single day. And we recycle them, and we recycle them, and we start to believe them. And that starts to now change our behavior. Right? So we went through all of this last week. Right? This is just the summary. And then I said, well, hold on. There's entire books and stuff written about happiness and being content and whatever, and it's billions and billions of dollar industry. But Mo Gaudat wrote something where he tried to solve for happiness, right? From his own deep emotional destruction. He came out and Allah inspired him to do these things, right? This is what I'm saying. Each of us have a purpose, even if we don't know it. But we're all created for something to lead to something. But an understanding that's very simple. The perception of the events of our life, minus the expectations that we have of those, is what makes us content. Meaning, if I expect something high, and the event in my life is lower, I'm going to be unhappy. So if I expect I'm going to just, live a life of ease, and then I get tested with something, well, now my perception of that, my expectation is not met. So I'm unhappy. I'm going to reflect constantly on why did this thing not happen in the way that I expected it to happen. And then you start to reflect that, and you recycle that, and you create more thoughts around that, and now you just go down a path of negativity. Whereas if you just turn to it and said, well, you know what? That really didn't matter to me anyways, and you lowered your expectation, and it came to almost equal to what has happened, well, then you start to live a more content life, right? It's easy to say. These were the books that now lead to all the stuff that we've been talking about, right? And I recommend that you guys read these books, or even just listen to the audiobook, or look up summaries, whatever. But you got Switch. So this is where we're going today, right? I'm going to talk about the main thesis behind this book. Solve for happy, that was the equation that I told you, that I just showed you right now. The little voice in your head, that's the stuff that we're talking about, the cognitive distortions. How do we turn those around? How do we combat them? Carol Dweck wrote about mindset, and this one's a seminal work that has changed. What's the difference between عَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا? What does the mistake teach us? Well, it teaches you to grow. If you thought that mistakes were fixed, and that you can never change because you made a mistake and everything is over after it, which is how the majority of the world thinks, well then you find yourself stagnant for your entire life. But if you actually take a different mindset and you look at it actually as an opportunity to learn and grow from it, then you live a very different life, right? So that book is powerful. And start with why, right, from Simon Sinek. That's also another, how do we actually, and this is not Islamic stuff, but you see that all of it is rooted in the tradition that I'm taking you through. starting with what's the purpose, what's the end goal that we're trying to get to, and why we're even motivated to do it, is a powerful tool that these guys have figured out. And they're using it to transform businesses and people's lives. And anyways. All right, so who, just to give me a break, who can explain this picture? What do you see?
I see an elephant, makes sense. Appreciate the split. And a man is sitting on an elephant,
Yeah.
walking the path.
Okay, good. So 3 distinctive and 3 boxes that didn't. Good. Has anybody heard this like analogy before? A rider, an elephant, a path? No, oh great, good. Well, this is the main premise of the book Switched by the Heath brothers. Okay. And the reason that this is important for what we're talking about today, which is how do we actually put our purpose into action, is to just understand the power of change and how easy or difficult it can be based on certain factors. So how many people in their New Year resolution told themselves they're going to do something, and for the first few weeks of January, you were on it, and now you've already started to hit the wall? Just be honest and raise your hand. Okay, a few people. You set a goal, and you're starting to falter already, right? You haven't even started your goal. Have you even created a goal? How about that? How many people have created a 2025, just even one goal for 2025? Yeah, okay, good, don't be shy. Okay, how many of you that raised your hands have started on that goal? Okay, how many of you still feel motivated to do that goal? Beautiful, man, you guys are riding that elephant. Beautiful, mashallah. Okay, so what's the premise here? So this cool guy is the rider, okay? And it's our rational mind. This guy is amazing at analysis paralysis. He loves information and he overthinks, right? This is the part of our brain. So again, let me just almost give you the ending to start. But these are 3 different parts of all human beings. Right? And the book goes through the different examples that show how important it is to work distinctly to influence all 3 parts of our brains to get holistic change. Many times we only address one part, maybe even 2 parts, but we completely fall off on the 3rd part. So this is an important concept to just conceptually get so that you can ask yourself the right question on who's driving at this moment. So the rider, the guy on top, right, just tell me, what do you see here? Like, give me some descriptions of the image itself. Like, what stands out to you? Just about the image. Without the 3 boxes. Yeah.
The rider is very small compared to the elephant.
Okay, good. The rider is very small in comparison to the elephant. What else? What is that? Okay, but do you know if he's staying on the path or not? Okay, so it looks like the rider is guiding the elephant to stay on the path. What else?
Can we say that the rider is passive in terms of like who's actually
Who's driving?
Who's driving? Yeah,
Why do you say that?
because he's just sitting there and the elephant's just doing the walking.
Now you're getting a little too good. Like abstract art. Okay, but you're saying that you just feel because of this little thing right here, like how is it guiding this massive thing here to stay on a path? You had something?
There's only one path, and it seems very focused.
Oh, there you go. Good. It's only one path, and there's just one destination that it's going to. Okay, good. All right, so now that you've called those out, So now think about it. If I say that the writer, he's strategically trying to think, how in the world am I going to get this beast of a thing to go on this one path? He's going to be thinking constantly, how do I do that? What's the data that I need to figure this out? Like, is there a possibility that, what are the scenarios that can go wrong in this situation? So he's constantly thinking. Okay, what else does he do? He needs clear direction, right? If you're guiding this massive beast, you need to know where you're going, or the beast is going to just be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go wherever I want to go. So the rider only moves forward when he's given clear and a specific plan. And he needs logical motivation, right? You need to rationally convince the rider that this is the right move, right? Leaving your job is not going to leave you on the street. There's a rational path towards quitting the job and doing what you love to do, right? Or there's a logical path to leave this job that's abusing you and go to another job that won't abuse you, right? Like, okay, good. The elephant. Elephant is our emotions. That's why it's so big, right? The elephant is our emotions. It's driven by feelings and definitely not logic, right? It's driven by feelings and not logic, and it needs emotional connection to a specific goal so that it stays motivated, okay? So this is completely counter to the rider. It prefers short-term comfort over long-term gain. So just think about your goals that you set. If they're long-term gains, your emotions are going to tell you, I definitely don't want to do that. What do I care about getting fit 10 years from now if I can't have the donut today? If I can't have this amazing Qahwa coffee right now, right? And it's decaf. Alhamdulillah. So we won't stay away. It doesn't care about long term. It cares about the now, right? That's a big characteristic. And it requires positive reinforcement. So think about the self-critic that's like, you suck, you're horrible, you can never do anything right, I always knew you were a failure. Well, what is the elephant going to do? Sit down, I don't want to move. There's no positivity in that. If 80% of my thoughts are negative and this guy only moves on positive, there's an equation problem that's happening, right? Good. The path. The path is the environment that we're moving in, okay? So this is where you have to shape the path to support the change. These are going to be very common sense things that you're like, I've heard these a million times. But I want to hear one person tell me, I set out to hit this goal, and I knocked it out of the park on the first try, and I want to learn from that, right? Because removing friction and barriers from your path makes it easier for you to go about your change, right? And having a sohbah, having a social support network around you that holds you accountable. How many of you that raised your hands about your goal told somebody else about it? Man, you guys are on top of it. So what's an example of a person you would have told? A friend, you're like, hey, I'm going to try to do this. What's the point of them knowing? Okay, so you actually actively sought that. Excellent. Good. All right. So how do we now bring this together? Because that seems weird. Like, how many people feel like there's two different entities fighting for control over your mind at a given time, right? Especially when you're trying to make a decision on like, dude, I need to make this change. You're torn between two, and your heart, your gut is telling you, I want to go down this path, but then this annoying, very logical voice comes and tells you like, absolutely not. You don't have everything figured out. Where's the plan? How are we going to do this? Think about this data point, right? It's a constant struggle that we have. So what I want to do in this is just give you some practicality on understanding what's happening in your brain. I can't give you the solution for your specific problem right now, but at least understanding and recognizing what's happening, what's going on, why are those questions being asked in your mind. All right. So the rider needs to be directed. That's the main conclusion to the book is that the rider needs to be directed, because if you leave them to their own devices, they'll never make a decision. They'll want more and more and more data to justify the rational decision to move forward. Okay, so how do you direct the rider? One, find your bright spots. So for the people that have a goal for 2025, if you, listen, nobody's, there's no compulsion in religion, there's no compulsion at Qahwa Cafe to speak and say anything. If you are comfortable to say out loud what your goal is, please do so I could use it as an example. If you're not comfortable, it's completely fine.
Dropping down 20 pounds of weight.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
You used the exact one. Okay, so losing weight.
Yes.
Okay, let's just say that that's the goal, right? That's the thing that you put on your mirror. Finding a bright spot would be, was there any other time in your life where you dropped weight?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do during that time?
Cut out sugar. Just eating just majorly meat, more protein. Less.
So what happened for you to have either gained or lost the progress that you did that first time?
I went to Pakistan.
God,
My brother got
think
married,
about it,
so
right? Yeah. Okay.
I could not hold back. I had to.
So now you're just, your 2025 goal is to get rid of the...
Yeah, the extra pounds that I put on. I gained 35 pounds in 2 months. Yeah. I already dropped
I
down.
think you can do it.
I already dropped 20. I already dropped 20.
But you've done it before.
Yes.
So the point is, guess what our minds tell us? I can never achieve this. Why would I ever be able to, like, losing weight at least is something that you may have concrete, tangible examples to. But there are many goals that we set for ourselves where we say, hey, this year I'm going to, what's that? Stop yelling at my kids. Okay, if I ask, where can we look for a bright spot in something where you've done similar? Has there been any time in your life where you haven't yelled at your kids before they were born? Yeah. No. So how do you now make a connection to that? One, it's just anger, right? Frustration. When has there been a time at work where you've held your frustration and haven't said the things that you want to say in the moment and you held back? That becomes a bright spot. It's like, well, hold on, I do that almost every day when I see my brother-in-law. That's my sister-in-law. When I see him, I don't tell him to his face the things that I want to tell him, right? So you're able to self-restrain. Now you use, well, what power are you using to get you to hold back in that moment, but you're not doing it with the kids now? And so you start to now use that as a very specific example to say, okay, well, I'm going to work on the skill of restraining that when I want to say something, just for 1 week. I'm not going to say one thing during the day that my brain is telling me I want to yell at my kids for. I'm going to restrain on that. You can yell at them for everything else, but I'm going to use that one bright spot of where I've done it before to change. Okay. Number 2, crystal clear goal. So this is where we do lose, a lot of people lose steam. Why? Because you lose the rider completely. So let's just take your example. I want to lose weight. That has no clarity whatsoever. Where would you start? How much do you want to lose? By when? What are you going to do to lose the weight? So what's the rider going to do? Oh my goodness, there's so much. We got to go listen to all of the podcasts and read all of the books that tell you how to lose weight in X amount of time. So they're going to get lost. You're going to spend maybe 12 to 6 months just reading the books and you're gaining 35 more pounds. You know what I mean? Just don't go to Pakistan. But the rider is going to constantly look for all of the data to just get started because they have no idea, because the goal itself is unclear. So what's a path to make the goal more clear for the rider to know what I need to do? So let's just take the harder example. I want to stop yelling at my kids. I want to minimize the amount of times that I yell at my kids over the next week. And let's just say you even get more specific if you know how often you see your kids, right? You come up with, you know, if on average daily you yell at your kids 10 times, right? I'm only going to yell at my kids 5 times a day. No, not no. 2 times, whatever. You cut it down to 1, right? But you see what I'm saying? So clear goal means you understand, you lay out what the actual thing is that you're trying to work on, right? Whatever it's a problem, it's a growth element, and then you define by when do I want to do it, what's the scope time frame that you want to do that, accomplish that goal by, and very clearly what is it that you want to achieve in that time frame, right? So I want to lose 20 pounds by, you know, May 15th, okay? So that becomes now the challenge is like, is that goal too ambitious? Because many times we set ourselves up for failure just even on the timelines. So giving yourself a little bit more time to achieve something actually makes the goal that much more clear. So anyway, setting a crystal clear goal. Now break it down into small steps. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of times we lose sight of saying, I just want to lose weight. You don't know when, you don't know how much, and you also don't know, well, what's step 1? So I would say if you already have a goal of just being more active, right? Just start taking, 5,000 steps a day and track that. Forget about the weight piece. You see what I'm saying? So you almost condition your brain to look at the next logical step that needs to be achieved in order to break down that goal, so the rider doesn't start to go crazy on what needs to be done further down the line. They just need to, for week 1, walk an average of 5,000 steps. Good. You just chunk that down. Now that's all getting you to May 15th. Now step 2 is cut out sugar, X amount of grams of sugar from your diet for that week.
It's like a micro habit, right? Like
Yeah, there's
atomic habit.
atomic habits, tiny habits. There's all kinds of books on, but it's also what the Rasul taught us, right? The Rasul taught us that when you're consistent, and this is why I'm saying, Salah teaches us all of this. If you don't have the discipline to pray 5 times a day, how are you ever going to achieve any other goal? If you can't even achieve the goal that you know in your heart of hearts is the number 1 goal that's going to get you to your Creator.
In the example of the rider and the example of the rider and the elephant, is it fair to make the comparison between aqal and nafs, or is that too different? Yeah.
So your nafs is amara bisu. It has nadama. It has regret, right? And it also has contentment. It can achieve that. So for sure, there's comparisons between the rider being the brain and the elephant being the heart, being the inner self, the lower self, whatever. So anyway, so breaking down. So for the people who had a goal, did you break it down? And I'm not going to call out anybody specific. Just tell me. Did you break down the goal that you set for yourself into manageable pieces? Okay, good. You guys are already 20% there. All right, so now how do we motivate the elephant? So think about this also in terms of, I kind of tried to do this even in the talk itself. Different times I speak to your mind, and different times I try to pull the heartstring. And I try to get your elephant to move. Because the elephant, again, think about it. The rider in comparison to the elephant is a little dinky thing that how much time can the rider spend on actually pulling the elephant to correct course? Very short period of time, if at all. So you have to now motivate the elephant. And that's the piece that we sometimes overlook, right? Because we say, no, but I know that that's what needs to be done, and we underestimate the power that the nafs, that the elephant has on us. So now, how do we motivate the elephant? Okay? Find your why, right? This is where you have to build an emotional connection. So let's just say salah. I'm not a person that prays. heart and my mind are telling me I want to pray. But it's very hard to wake up for Fajr. It's very hard to go and put cold water during this weather. It's very hard to wake up, get out of bed, make wudu, and pray. It's just not conditioned, right? So in order to get this elephant who just wants to sleep, wants to stay warm, right? He wants to stay comfortable. He doesn't want to be bothered. He doesn't like the cold. In order to just get the elephant to move, you have to find a way to motivate him to say, like, listen, it's life or death. You have to want to do this. What is the thing in your life that you can change to get the elephant to be motivated on why it's important? So losing weight is a prime example where there's not always a higher purpose. It's like, I just want to hit a certain number on the scale. But the moment you hit that number on the scale, many of us have probably experienced this, you immediately regress and go harder, right? And gain more weight. Because the elephant is like, yeah, there's willpower for a certain period of time, but once you've now exhausted the willpower for X number of weeks, I'm going to go and eat everything that you told me not to eat. So the purpose has to be a much higher why. That, hey, listen, here are the numbers. If I keep eating the way I'm eating, I'm going to die. Elephant, you are going to die. Look at your cholesterol level. Look at your sodium level. Look at all of your numbers. You will die if you don't stop right now. Now the elephant is motivated. So you have to wake up in whatever goals that you set for yourself that gets you closer to your purpose. Because the end of the day is, how do you serve Allah? What is the tactic you can use on yourself to get that motivation for the elephant to move? Celebrate the small wins. So this is where I feel also we are not compassionate with ourselves, right? And this goes back to self-worth. If we have issues with self-worth, we think we suck at everything. And like nothing is good enough. Every step you take in the right direction, you think that, well, you could have done better. That voice just tells you, Uthman, for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you went and did this, and you could have done 10 times better than that. So what do? I told you the story, right, of my manager at Google.
Yeah.
After I got promoted, and he said, the advice that he gave me is like, dude, you didn't even take a second to celebrate it. Well, why? Because I'm already on to the next thing. And I'm not celebrating the small win. So the moment, and that happens to us constantly, every single day, we don't celebrate the small wins. And so this is trying to build a habit within our life to recognize the positive, because you're already at a disadvantage with how your brain thinks when it starts to look at all the negative things. So the moment you see the bright spot, celebrate it. Make an activity, and this is even something like with my wife and I, the small things where maybe we did something for each other. In that moment, how do we celebrate? Like, hey, listen, this was a good day because we did this for each other, right? Despite maybe having, conflict throughout the day, maybe things didn't go, but the one thing that did go right, you amplify that. Because that starts to now overshadow all of the negative things that are already distortions in your mind. But we overthink that we could have done better. So you have to deal with the self-worth first. You are enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you on a certain path. You need to constantly look back at yourself and say, you know what? I at least took the first step. I prayed one prayer today. I prayed one prayer today. That is a win. Even if, well, I should have prayed 5. Well, no, I'm not even going to pray 1. Take the small win, pray 1.
So on that point, hypothetically, if you don't celebrate the small win and you think in your mind that you should have done better, then you can cognitively force yourself to do better, right? I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but overall you could potentially achieve more and have a bigger win, right? So I'm just saying, like, in your mind battle there, how would you address that?
Are you going to be happy once you do more if you never celebrate it? Because there's always more you can do.
Yeah.
You're never going to end. So that's what leads to burnout as well. It's just never enough. So there's two different, so having the path of what you're going to do next is fine. But once you achieve the first milestone, sit back and figure out for yourself, how do you celebrate that? Even if it's just to sit in your own room and say, yeah! That's it, right? But figure it out. Like, our rider is right, so one, the distortions in our head saying, hey, if you just take a moment where your eyes are off the ball, you're going to fail. That in and of itself is a distortion, because if you go through the questions we had, is that true? Like, if you look back at all of the things you've achieved, if you stop for 1 second and said, yay, are you going to lose everything else after it? No, it's a distortion. But you also have to keep in perspective that when you're only focused on the next thing, you never celebrate, you never enjoy the current state that you're at, which is getting you X% of the way to the thing, right? So it's not celebrating for the sake of celebrating. It's celebrating that now you're one step closer to the end goal. You have to satiate him. You have to satiate the alpha.
I feel like there's a difference between recognition and celebration, because celebration is also my age, my means that I've reached the end of something. Yeah, and so like recognizing the small win, like recognizing I just lost 5 pounds, or I just did achieve my goals in that week. That's like almost like a reset in an attempt to stay on that path. So momentum is really important when there's anything. So I feel like maybe there's that like tiny little distinction between the celebration versus the recognition that can like keep you moving.
Like when you think of celebration to keep going.
No, like the celebration to me indicates that I reached the end. Like it's done. So now I'm like, yay, I can do it, I'm done, I can go meet that cake and whatever. Like, so I see what you're saying and I get what you're feeling. But for me, if I just reset it to become like a recognition that I achieved that goal, yeah, it actually motivates me more. Because it's like, oh, I'm actually moving in that direction, and actually something did change in my life.
Hands are flying, and everybody's trying to get motivated. I'm on it. Is taken away from my time?
So,
We still haven't even gotten to the path yet.
sorry. Just a quick comment. I think it's a little delusional to not celebrate the small win. I think there's a hubris to think that you're the cause of any win, right? So if you're not really grateful to Allah in the small win, do you even deserve the bigger win, right? So what is it? Let me check out the one, right? So if you're not going to celebrate, be grateful to Allah now. Why would He give you more?
That was similar to what I was saying, maybe you're gonna speak to it, but I was saying like that, this is one of the most important parts of the process, because if we're not grateful to Allah for what He's giving us right now, in the present moment, which is the only one we really have, like, what is the point? Like, I'm grateful to Allah that Allah is allowing me to be this person today. Like, and then it feeds into the narrative of our identity, which is battling the idea of the shaitan who's trying to get us to think otherwise, so.
Absolutely. But you see, so this is where I will say, to your point also, Sajid, or Sajjad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, that's why all three have to be working together. If you're just celebrating just for the elephant's sake, the elephant may just get happy and stop. You're like, hey, I did what I needed to do. But that's why the path is important. You have to know where you're actually trying to get to. So if this win was one that you've chunked down to celebrate it in the moment as just a milestone to get you to the next step, that becomes very different than just saying, like what Sos would say, like, yeah, I'm done, right? I'm finished. Now it's like, well, there's nothing else to do. So the path becomes even more important, which is why you have to have a longer term, detailed out path on where you're trying to go from a course standpoint. All right, but celebrate the small wins is a big deal. This is why the Rasul said the positivity, we underestimate how negative our life is in our own heads. And we underestimate how that negativity actually translates to each other. But we're meant to co-regulate. Right? That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَخَلَقَكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. He created you in pairs so you can co-regulate each other. We all go through different arousal levels that make us feel different things, and our nervous systems react to that, right? But when we're with each other and you have like, that's why I'm saying, oh, you told somebody that, you know, you have a goal and they're gonna hold you accountable. Guess what? They're gonna sit there and tell you like, hey, you gotta stop and celebrate that. But know that you're not 20% of the way there. You're 50% of the way there. Keep going. And I'm saying this even as when you're on a race, right? And you know, if I'm thinking to, you know, a large endurance race, like you're running a marathon or you're doing an Ironman, it gets the hardest when you're closer to the end, right? And it's actually the people around you that are sitting there cheering that give you the energy to say, you know what? It's the journey that I was just on that makes it worthwhile to go through the finish line. So we have to use each other to co-regulate, to celebrate the small wins, because if we're left to just ourselves, that's a large mindset shift that we have to work on. But when you have somebody else to also call you out and say, hey, you're not celebrating, like my man, right? It was so foundational. Yeah, I don't even know if he understood it from this term, but it changed my entire perspective on how even I lived my life. So it's something that I think it's important for us to comprehend. All right, make it fun and enjoyable, right? This is why you see a lot of times, I would say, people who maybe were raised in like immigrant households, everything was like all or nothing. Like if you don't get this, everything else is a failure. Or you're punishment driven, you're incentive driven, and most of the time the incentive is the stick, not the carrot. So think about all of the ways that we live, and think about the scenario. Yeah, but they keep talking too. You know, it's good. We'll break out into groups. Think about all the scenarios where you've given yourself either a carrot or a stick. And if that's the methodology you've used to keep yourself motivated, how often do you actually hit the goal that you were trying to hit? At a certain point, the elephant either gives up, or the rider completely loses track, or the path itself is like, this is not even worth it. Take the time to actually, this is what I was saying even about salah. If the salah is mechanical, if it's just about doing the legal rulings of the salah, there's no joy in it. There's no joy in it. And if there's no joy in something, why would you ever keep doing it? So the Rasul ﷺ used to find joy in these things. The Sahaba used to find joy in these things. There are times in your life where you found joy in it. Try to replicate those moments where there was joy. What was the environment? How do we keep doing that? Use visualization to kind of build that excitement. So actually put pictures. I used to always not make fun of it, but like I never believed this stuff, like vision boards but then I started the imagery that Allah gives us in the Quran is so powerful, because He allows each and every one of us to actually visualize what does Jannah look like to us, what does hell look like, and that motivates the elephant, right? It creates an image in your mind on what you're working so hard to get to, or what you're working so hard to not get to. And that becomes a powerful tool. So when you have a goal, try to associate it with another image. That's something that you look at every day and you say, I want to relive that. I want to get to that. That will be me. And you start to now see yourself achieving it, and it plays to your own mind's strength, because you now start to build the right pathways that get you to achieving that goal. And then find the right support system. Find like a group. This is what did last week we said this, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So look at your group. If your group has no ambition, they don't want to grow, they don't want to improve, then you setting goals for yourself and hanging out with them is probably going to do you a disservice. So ask yourself the critical question, is it time for you to find another group? Or is it time for you to maybe step up to what your group actually wants you to do? Shaping the path. Okay, so 1, reduce friction. So this is the hardest thing that we that we do to ourselves, is we make the path to a certain goal super hard. So that's when we either set the goal to be something that's just, it's crazy. No person, unless you're like an Olympian, is going to be able to lose X amount of pounds in like 3 weeks. So giving yourself that goal is just setting you up for failure, right? So shaping the path is about reducing the friction. What would be the easiest way for me to get to a specific goal in the smallest chunks of milestones where I enjoy it, where I celebrate the win, and where I'm able to now, be in the moment, right? Be in the present. And that's where just shaping the path itself becomes so important. Know that look back at maybe some of your previous goal settings, right? Previous goal settings. And if you weren't able to achieve them, think about whether that goal was just there was too much friction on the path. Like if I tell myself, I'm going to eat a certain way, but I know that I have a family of 3 kids and I'm not going to be able to prepare meals, that might be a harder goal to achieve. So how do I adjust it where I'm still trying to get to my why, I'm still trying to get to my purpose, but it becomes a different way of getting there, a different path of getting there. Create triggers and cues, right? When you start to sense yourself going off the path, what brings you back into it? Shrink the change, and we spoke about that. And tweak your environment. This is one of the hardest things that anybody can do. A lot of times the things that hold us back from our purpose is the environment that we've created around us, right? So we think there's no way out. If you really took a step back and said, I feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me for this reason. This is what I think the ummah needs right now. But I'm stuck in the environment where I just need to hustle every single day because I'm trying to make X amount of money, or I'm trying to achieve this promotion or this title. The environment you've now created around you is not going to facilitate the purpose that you're trying to achieve. So something has to change. So you have to start to tweak the environment. And then track your progress in a visible way, right? All right. Okay, so Umar, these are community guidelines, so we're going to do some breakouts. And then the next slides are...
So, this is the part where we do the discussion circles. And for the discussion circle, we always make sure that we have some community guidelines to make sure that the discussions go as fantastically as possible. If you've been here to Qahwa before, I'm sure you've known some of these already. So I'm going to run through these, and then we'll have you guys move into the discussion groups, inshallah, because that'll be fun, chaotic, and a little bit amusing on my part. So I'm going to run through these. Can anyone, if you've been here before, can you tell me what old friends means? You can raise your hand. Anyone? I'll call on you. I know somebody knows. Yeah, treat people like your old friends. I'm sure there's a lot of people here that you've never met before, but just treat them like your old friends. Be nice to them. Be chill with them. You can josh each other's shorts if that's the phrase that people still use. No, no, is that a bad phrase? No, I don't know. Sorry. No, and that's actually that actually moves us into embracing discomfort, because sometimes you might talk about things that are a little bit uncomfortable. You might be a little bit vulnerable. That's okay, so long as you trust that the people around you are going to keep that secret, they're going to hold that space for you, and they're going to make you feel comfortable, inshallah. We have keep it halal. Does anyone want to say what that one is? Anyone? Raise your hand. This is the most fun one. Yeah, just keep it respectful. Make sure that if you're saying a story about somebody that you don't accidentally backbite about them. Say it in a way where no one can actually identify who that person is. Maintain proper boundaries between guys and girls. For the love of God, don't keep it haram. Not. Yeah. We have yes and.